And now Childe Harold was sore sick at heart, and from his fellow bacchanals would flee. 'Tis said at times the sullen tear would start, but pride congealed the drop within his eye. Apart he stalked in joyless reverie, and from his native land resolved to go, and visit scorching climes beyond the sea. With pleasure drugged he almost longed for woe, and e'en for change of scene would seek the shades below. So this is more Byron. This is stanza number 6 from the first canto in Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. So last week I had done an excerpt from English Bards and Scotch Reviewers, which was a young Byron essentially responding to some criticism he received about his first foray into poetry. And so that last piece had established that Byron was a little bitter, kind of just was not having it with the literary scene of England at the time, and this is the first example of him really getting down on paper that I mean, he's angsty. You can kind of read it in this, but he's longing for more. He knows that he believes he is destined for much more than bickering between these petty writers in Scotland or in England or wherever. And so Childe Harold's Pilgrimage is an epic poem, very autobiographical in content, in the sense that it has this main protagonist, Childe Harold, who is this kind of like knight in training. And he goes on an adventure, and he's brooding and has flings with a lot of women, but he only loves one. And it's this kind of trope that exists today, and it really this is one of the earliest inspirations for this kind of trope that we have of it's the Byronic hero, this kind of like anti-hero bad boy doing the right thing but isn't happy about it kind of thing, which is. It's funny because I was reading about it a little bit, and Lord Byron was initially hesitant to publish the first two cantos of this poem, which were kind of based on his travels. He had left England in 1810, I think, and went to Portugal, and he wanted to travel. He wanted to go places. He wanted to have adventures, and that kind of is reflected in the life he ended up leading. He fought in Italy, and he was a soldier, and he died young, and he had this kind of crazy, bombastic, exciting life, drama-filled, scandal-filled, but he was hesitant to publish it in 1812 because he felt it was a little too revealing of kind of his feelings, and it's kind of interesting because it's kind of he kind of truthfully captures a lot of his character flaws in this description of this kind of figure, and he certainly does project a lot of the qualities that he maybe considers himself to have that he might not quite have in the quantities he has. Some of his more heroic qualities in this character he maybe didn't exhibit in his actual life, but. Not to say that he wasn't heroic. I mean, he fought in a war. He was a soldier, but he had, he kind of had a history of being a bit of an ass. But it's very interesting to be reading this because it has permeated our culture today. Like James Bond is a classic example of this kind of, has sex with a bunch of women, and he's brooding and mysterious, and but he saves the day kind of thing. And it's really interesting that there's this fascination with it that extends into today. It's interesting because I also started picking up on some interesting callbacks to things that reminded me of Eugene O'Neill. Maybe it's just because I saw Long Day's Journey into Night recently, but this kind of, Eugene O'Neill was the same kind of person who had that, he longed for something. He wanted to go. He longed to be at sea, to be away, to go somewhere, and so it's into the specific callbacks to that reminded me in this piece where he talks about he wants to go beyond the sea, and he almost longed for woe and was brooding and was stood away from everyone else. And it's interesting because it's that kind of behavior. It's this kind of self-fueling behavior. It's like he's pushing people away and being kind of an asshole, and then it fuels that. Like, if you push people away and are an asshole, they're gonna leave you alone. But then that like adds to what he's brooding. He's like, oh, I don't have any friends, and yeah, it's a lifestyle that I don't have a lot of sympathy for, but it's interesting to read about because it is, you know, Tony Stark, you know, in all the Marvel movies is this kind of, you know, super charming, sarcastic, you know, but kind of an asshole character, and that for whatever reason that's endearing to us as viewers, as readers, as audience members. But it's interesting to be able to start to see that progression of Lord Byron, because he, you know, he went from kind of some pretty endearing kind of early poetry, and then got really bitter in his response, and now it's kind of like, fuck you guys, I'm destined for much more. This is good, epic, worthwhile. You know, this thing he's writing about is of significance, and he ends up kind of trying to live it out. And you know, when he leaves England and goes on his own adventure, right? So, so yeah, it was interesting. Real quickly, I did want to touch on the structure of this, because this actually has an interesting mechanical structure as far as the poem is concerned. So it's I looked it up. It's a Spenserian stanza, who I think it's Edmure or Edward Spenser from the 1500s, who wrote the Faerie Queen. I think it's the Faerie Queen. But it's similar to Shakespeare. It's iambic pentameter. So it's AB AB in terms of the rhyming scheme for the first 4 lines, and then it's repeats that B rhyme again, and so that you have a BC BC for the second 4, and then there's one 12 syllable, or 12 syllable 6 feet line that also rhymes with the C. So it's similar to Shakespeare, but has a little bit of a different. And I kind of like that. It makes it flow better as like an epic poem, to have that kind of like almost galloping feel in the last line with that extra 4 beats, or extra 2 beats rather. Oh no, I'm sorry, because the first 8 are not full 10-foot like Shakespearean lines. They're only 8, so they're kind of short. So it's one set of 4, a second set of 4 that are shorter than like the normal Shakespearean 10 feet, and then there's that extra long one at the end, and then it gallops into the next stanza. And so it was kind of fun to do this. I found it flowed easier, and it was easier to memorize in that way, because it kind of galloped along at a nice little pace. So yeah, this was the beginning of Childe Harold's pilgrimage. I'm going to be doing an excerpt from the 2nd canto next week, and then we'll just keep on forging ahead through Byron's career. I'm going to continue my focus on Lord Byron as I head into Tech Week for this production of Arcadia that I'm performing in. So we open this Friday, November 3rd. It's at the Hatbox Theater in Concord. Tickets are available. You can buy them online. I'll put the link to the Facebook event in the comments, and I'll also put the link to the website where you can buy tickets. It's a great show. It's really super beautiful play that combines 2 of my favorite things, comedy and beautiful, tasty language with mathematics and physics and the mysteries of why we're here and what we're here for, and these kind of universal human questions. It's a really, really great play, and I'm excited to have it open this week. So yeah, thank you for watching. Have a happy Sunday.